What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Wrasslin for Life Network, and welcome back to another edition of the TNA Impact Review. We had a fun episode of TNA Impact this week. Jordan Grace defended the Knockouts World Championship in an open challenge. We actually heard from Josh Alexander, and we had some qualifying matches for the Ultimate X match at Emergence. So we got a lot to talk about today. Let's get into it. Like I said, thank you for joining in. Thank you for tuning in back to the Wrasslin for Life Network. This is another edition of the TNA Impact Review. And let's jump right into this week's episode of TNA Impact. And it kicked off with the system. And who had the mic first? None other than Alicia Edwards. And she first started off, and I'm going to try to do this in her accent by saying, "Do you want to know something? I said, do you want to know something?" Hilarious. But anyway, basically, the system was out there to say that they're in the rebuilding stage. The system will get all of their gold back eventually. But first, their first priority is Mike Santana. Moose basically called out Mike Santana because Mike Santana called out him last week on TNA Impact. So we're getting something there. We're getting something with Mike Santana and Moose very, very soon. And we might actually talk about something close to the end of the episode with Moose and Mike Santana. But the system is in a rebuilding stage right now. They have to kind of regroup, rebuild, rethink their strategy after Slammiversary. The only person holding gold in the system is Alicia Edwards. She is one half of the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Champions. And right now, they just got to regroup. That's the biggest thing for the system. They have to regroup. Alicia Edwards and the other members of the system continue to say they are the best group in professional wrestling right now. They have to kind of prove it. They have to kind of prove it after Slammiversary, after losing the majority of their gold. So what is next for the system? It seems like it will be Mike Santana. Are we done with the dark version of Jonathan Gresham, the octopus? And if we are, I'm kind of disappointed because I was really liking where it was potentially headed. And the only reason why I'm asking that question is we had a backstage segment with Gresham and Gia Miller, and Gia Miller basically asked him, like, "I wasn't expecting you back in this form. What has happened?" And Gresham basically said he was sick over the past couple of months, but he is back and he is ready to face Kushida tonight in singles action. That's basically all we got. I'm not sure if it wasn't working out with TNA with that character. Not sure if Gresham didn't like it, but I felt like they had built that character up for about 3 months, and now it may just be gone, or maybe this was just an offshoot of what's to come. But I think this character is really done in TNA wrestling. And if it is, I'm sadly disappointed. But Gresham will take on Kushida later in the night, and we'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. So it was announced a couple of weeks ago that at Emergence, Ultimate X would be returning, and this time it would be for the X Division title, meaning Mike Bailey will immediately be put in this match because he will be defending his title, but not Mike Bailey. He wanted to actually qualify, right? So he was put in a qualifying match, and this is the first of 2 qualifying matches from this past week's episode of TNA Impact. The first one was Trent Seven, Mike Bailey, and Jake something. And basically here, this was a must win for Mike Bailey. If he didn't win this match, he would have to relinquish, he would have to vacate the X Division Championship, and we would have a new X Division champion crowned at Emergence. Mike Bailey really just needed to put himself in the match. He was already there, but he wanted to qualify. So we have this qualifying match between these 3 gentlemen. Like I said, Trent Seven, Jake something, and Speedball Mike Bailey. This was a fun match, but this was a must win. Like I said, essentially, Speedball Mike Bailey was defending the X Division Championship in this match. If he lost, he had to vacate the title. But this was a great match to kick off TNA Impact. I loved it. I really did. It showed Trent Seven. It showed Mike Bailey. It showed that Jake Something is still a beast in the TNA X Division realm. This match was obviously won by Speedball Mike Bailey, but I think that was a fun stipulation to add. It was a little weird, but I think it was also a fun stipulation to add that he was in this qualifying match, and if he didn't win, he had to vacate the title. A very short reign if he really had to vacate the title, but this was a fun match nonetheless, and I really like the stipulation, even though it was a bit weird. So the next match on the card was Gresham versus Kushida, and this match was not in its original form because we were supposed to get that dark character by Jonathan Gresham, but this match right here might have been the best match of the night for me. This was a fun match by Gresham and Kushida, a very good technical wrestling match. I was into it from start to finish. Jonathan Gresham is one of the best in the ring, and I've grown to really like Kushida over the past a year, 2 years of me really diving deep into TNA wrestling and Kushida's past. So I really have liked Kushida so far in TNA wrestling. Fun match altogether. Like I said, a very hard technical wrestling match that was won by Kushida. I really thought Gresham was going to pick up the win, but Kushida won with the hoverboard lock. I think that's what it's called, but it was a great match nonetheless. If you haven't watched TNA Impact, at least watch this match because you will definitely enjoy this. I'm not sure where this goes because it seems like the dark character of Gresham is gone. Maybe it'll return. I'm not sure what is going on, but Kushida and Gresham was in this feud with the dark character. So I'm not sure where we move here next, but nonetheless, Kushida did win this match. Fun technical wrestling match. So the next match is the open challenge for the TNA Knockouts World Championship. And obviously, we thought it was probably going to be somebody from NXT. That's kind of what it's been the past couple of open challenges. But this time, it was somebody right from TNA. And I was actually happy. It was Rosemary. And Rosemary has been kind of repackaged a little bit. I'm not sure because we don't know where Havoc is, but Rosemary has been going through a transition period right now. And for Rosemary to accept the open challenge, I thought was perfect. These two women were killing it. Jordan Grace and Rosemary were killing it in this match. It was getting to that point. It was getting to that pinnacle point in that match until another one of my favorites, Ash by Elegance, came out, attacked Jordan Grace, and she attacked Rosemary, which led to a disqualification. You know who was visibly upset though? It was Jordan Grace. Jordan Grace was visibly upset that that match ended in a DQ. I don't know where we go from here. Are we setting up Rosemary, Jordan Grace, and Ash by Elegance in a high profile feud heading into Bound for Glory in a couple of months? Not sure here. I do know Rosemary and Ash by Elegance have been somewhat going back and forth. Rosemary has been antagonizing George Iceman, the personal concierge of Ash by Elegance. And right now, there's really no connection with Rosemary and Jordan Grace other than the open challenge match and being attacked by Ash by Elegance. So, not sure where we go here. I know they're really trying to build this knockouts division and build this TNA Knockouts World Championship picture around Jordan Grace and Ash by Elegance. And with the involvement of Rosemary, I think we are heading into the right direction of having some banger matches between all three of them shortly in TNA wrestling. Josh Alexander finally speaks. Finally, after about 3 weeks, he finally speaks and he says what we've all been saying. He's the standard of TNA wrestling. He carried TNA wrestling on his back. He's the heart and soul of TNA wrestling. He's the face of TNA wrestling. Everything that we knew he was going to say, he finally said it. He also said that Joe Hendry is just a meme. The crowd chance he sold out. Josh Alexander, of all people, sold out when he carried this company on his back. Like, disrespectful, just high disrespect for Josh Alexander. I can't boo the man. I can't. I'm behind Josh Alexander's heel turn 100%, but he wasn't done. He wasn't done. He said that Nick Nemeth said that he's a fighting champion. So he wants a championship opportunity to face Nick Nemeth. He called Nick Nemeth out, basically telling Nick Nemeth that we, the fans, will be calling Nick Nemeth the same thing we called him in WWE, and that is a transitional champion. Nick Nemeth didn't like that. He stormed to the ring, had a mic, thought he was going to say something. He attacked Josh Alexander and basically said, "You want a title match? You have that title match next week on TNA Impact." So it's going down next week on TNA Impact. Josh Alexander, Nick Nemeth for the TNA World Championship, a match that I have been looking forward to since Nick Nemeth arrived in TNA at Hard to Kill. This is going to be a banger match. I'm going to be locked in next Thursday. I'm going to be seated for this match because it's going down, and it probably will be the best match of that night next week on TNA Impact. So the next match on the card was the second qualifying match of the night. It was Zachary Wentz, Dante Chen from NXT, and KC Navarro. This was an excellent match, and they also mentioned the Rascals heel turn this week on NXT. And I shouldn't say the Rascals heel turn. I should say Wes Lee turned on Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz this past week on NXT. Shocking moment. I was actually upset and kind of heartbroken because I really wanted these three guys together and kind of run TNA and NXT for a moment, but they decided to go with the Wesley heel turn. But either way, going back to this match with Dante Chen, KC Navarro, and Zachary Wentz, a stellar match between these three. Zachary Wentz qualified for the Ultimate X match at Emergence. Happy to see him getting his shine and getting his moment, and he's going to do great in that Ultimate X match at Emergence. This was a fun match. Another one that I feel like you kind of got to go out your way and watch. If you haven't watched TNA Impact, this is one that you need to watch because all three of these men delivered. And I love that we're getting all of this NXT involvement in TNA and vice versa, getting the TNA involvement in NXT, especially with Joe Hendry, because he said he's not going anywhere in NXT. He's staying right there. And I believe he has some type of deal with WWE and TNA worked out where he can appear on both shows and train at the WWE Performance Center. So this NXT TNA crossover continues with Dante Chen, and we have one more in the main event that involves Joe Hendry. So I'm loving where this is going, and I can't wait to see, as we charge towards the end of the year, Bound for Glory coming up. We got a lot of NXT stuff coming up as well. If this is going to just continue and grow, and we finally see that big explosion with potentially a Worlds Collide pay-per-view with NXT and TNA. It is main event time for TNA Impact. Joe Hendry versus Wolfgang from NXT. This was a fun match, and I believe Joe Hendry has main evented the past like 4 or 5 TNA Impacts. I'm not sure, but he's main evented a lot over the past couple of weeks here. A great match, won by Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry basically had this match locked. Like, this was a Joe Hendry heavy match. Wolfgang got the upper hand a few times, got some good licks in close to the end of the match, but Joe Hendry was the one that really took it to Wolfgang. At one point, I did think Wolfgang was going to win close to the end of the match, but this was all Joe Hendry, and he picked up the win. But this just shows you that you got to continue to watch this NXT and TNA crossover. You got to keep watching because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who is going to show up on what show. We had the big turn with Wes Lee on the Rascals this past week's episode of NXT. So there's a lot of moving parts, and as we continue to go towards Bound for Glory and NXT having their big specials, we might get their worlds collide moment where, they just say, we got to have a pay-per-view worlds collide. Now, I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there. If y'all listening TNA, if y'all listening WWE, I'm throwing it out there. We need to have a worlds collide pay-per-view with NXT versus TNA, and me obviously being on the side of TNA, because who wants NXT to win? Not me. Anyway, but yeah, Joe Hendry, Wolfgang, really fun match. All of the matches tonight on TNA Impact were really good. All of the matches that happened this past week, really solid matches, really fun matches from start to finish. It was a really good show. They produced a really good show this week. Kudos to TNA for that. But there's one other thing I want to talk about before I let you guys go today, and that is what happened after the match. Mike Santana and the System in a parking lot brawl, going back and forth. Mike Santana taking on all the members of the System. Like, dude, there's like 4 of them, and it's one of you. No, don't do that. But this has set up a match for next week where Moose will be taking on Mike Santana, and this is going to be a stellar match. I forgot that, the World Heavyweight Championship will be on the line, or the TNA World Championship will be on the line. So there's 2 potential banger matches happening next week. Josh Alexander versus Nick Nemeth for the TNA World Championship, and Moose versus Mike Santana. So you got to keep your eyes glued next week. It's going to be a phenomenal episode of TNA Impact once again. All right, guys, that is it for the TNA Impact review this week. I will be back next week talking all the TNA goodness, all of the things going down in the world of TNA wrestling. If you are watching on YouTube, again, like I say every week, thank you for watching on YouTube. If you are listening on the podcasting platforms, thank you again. Please come back next week. We'll be talking about all things TNA. So I hope to see you in the next one.